Now we are happy to say good morning to Crystal Howell. She is a chartered professional accountant and certified internal auditor. And we've been doing a series on surviving and thriving after job loss. So this morning we want to look at contracted work and let me just make sure I get it right. So Crystal, good morning.
Good morning.
we are Yes, happy Monday. Happy Monday. We are looking at the contracted worker along with self-employment. There we go. That completely slipped me. So let's talk about the angle for our discussion this morning as far as that goes.
So we have over the last year been talking about starting your own business and how you would go about that process. So we're just trying to look at it now from a perspective where you have lost your job and you want to make sure that you got all your I's and cross your T's. And we would have touched a bit on last week when we spoke about getting into contracting and the benefits of it, where you have that freedom and flexibility and being able to dictate your own hours. But of course, we also must talk about the fact that when you start to work for yourself, for many persons, you are putting in more hours than you would have if you were employed for someone else, because now everything is at you. All the decisions that have to be made, every aspect of business, you're the one that is now responsible for this, as opposed to with a company where different persons will be hired to handle several aspects. So we just want to make sure that persons are prepared and reminded about all the things that they would need to think about when they decide to go and get into contracting work or to start their own business.
And then I
So
would
the first
imagine,
thing,
Crystal. Oh, sorry, continue.
go ahead, go ahead.
No, I was saying, especially for people who are coming out of a full-time job situation and maybe moving into being a contract worker or an entrepreneur, then the whole issue of budgeting would, be even more relevant so that they'd know how many hours they need to put in to be able to fulfill all that they will have to.
And that point that you just mentioned is very important, because when people think of budgeting, they only think about the money, but it's also important to understand how to budget your time. So there are many persons that they get overwhelmed by everything that's required and they work round the clock, 24 hours, and they end up burning themselves out. And it's not to say that when you're first starting out, a significant amount of your time won't be required, but you also have to learn to manage it properly so that you do not end up having that burnout effect before your business is even really gotten off the ground. So the best thing to do is to make sure that you start small. Don't begin by spending money on renting space and buying equipment and all these other things before you really have an idea of how everything is going to work out. If you still have a job and you think you'll be in danger of losing it, the best idea is to start your business part-time on the weekend and after work. But if you already have been laid off, you will want to make sure that whatever funds that you have from the different sources we would discuss, whether it's a payout from your job or unemployment benefits or savings that you may have had from before, it's going to become of critical importance that you make sure that you manage and budget this money wisely so that you don't sink everything into parts of these small business that you think are very critical, but then when you look, there's no money left for other things that are just as important to get the business off the ground. So having that business plan and knowing all the things, all the areas that your money is going to have to go into is going to be very important in this time.
Okay. I saw that last slide there was focusing on the business name and getting registered and the big question of whether to incorporate. So
Yes.
everybody doesn't always start by registering, or they don't start with the name, but they definitely don't always incorporate. When do you need to incorporate?
Well, the part with registering a business name, for some persons, just for those who may not know, the process to register your
Mm-hmm.
business name is actually not that bad. You have to have
Right.
$104 to take to Kaipo, and they actually are
Mm-hmm.
pretty helpful if you've made mistakes on the form to let you know what you need to change, and there are forms there that you can fill it back out again before you actually submit it so that everything is ready to go when it's time for processing. So that part is usually very straightforward. When it comes to
Indeed.
incorporating, and this is probably I know Ernst Young did an entire series where this is concerned to try to help persons to understand, even though yes, it's a more difficult process, it has a lot of benefits, and it's just to understand everything that's involved so that you can have all of your paperwork together, dot your I's and cross your T's. It's going to cost a bit more as well, so it's $780 with Kaipo, but you also have to take into consideration any legal fees that you may have to pay, as a lawyer is going to have to sign a declaration to say that you're not a minor, that you have all your marbles, that you're not an insane person. And then you have a justice of peace stamp that as well to certify that everything is good to go. So it's not that it is hard, but it is definitely more work than filling out a form, paying $104 and giving it to Kaipo. But there are many benefits to incorporating. Number one on my personal list are the tax benefits. Because if you have income as an individual, this is going to be taxed at an individual rate of about 28%. Now, when it comes to a small business, if you incorporate, the tax rate comes down to about 5%. And we can already see the great benefit
Huge
of being able
difference.
to,
Yeah.
yeah. So I know persons think of incorporating as a tedious process, and you will have to file annual financial statements, and I'm hoping that these discussions that I am having with you will help you to realize that it's not as horrible a process if you've been documenting everything and getting everything in order. Some of the benefits you can have in terms of the savings will go towards being able to afford some of the other things that are required for incorporation. But it's a lot to think about, and I know that for some persons that
Mm-hmm.
are already overwhelmed with everything else in starting a small business, incorporation might be the last thing on your mind. And you don't have to start with the incorporation. You could just start with registering the business name, and as you get into the groove and the flow of everything, you can then talk to a financial expert and have them or a lawyer be able to manage that process for you and have everything taken care of. But it's definitely something to think about when you look at all of the benefits, including the fact that an incorporated business becomes a separate entity from you, which means that your liability in the case of somebody maybe wanting to sue you, that also is very important, because your personal assets will be protected because they're separate from the business. When you only register the business name, you and the business are one, which means anything that happens to that business happens to you, and all of your assets are at risk. So there are lots of pros and cons to weigh when you're thinking about registering versus incorporating. And I would love to encourage persons to give them some thought so that it's not just, something you push down the road, and if something happens, then you say, oh, I wish I had incorporated and protected my personal assets. I wish that when it comes time now to file taxes, I didn't have all these taxes to pay. It's a lot to think about. You have to be able to say which one works best for you and what risks you're willing to take.
I think that you summarized it best when you said that you really have to plan for it. And if you're going to go into business, you might not want to jump into it, but certainly think about, weigh the benefits against the challenges you might have to make a decision before you move forward with it. I think that's most important. So thank you, as always, very informative and lots to think about, Crystal.
Of course. And I hope you guys have a wonderful Monday.
Thank you. You as well.
And you, thank you.